everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I cannot believe that I'm about to say this on this channel, but I have been doing YouTube and social media for 10 years. A decade of fitness, a decade of failures, a decade of nonsense, but nonetheless, a decade of transformation. And I got this comment on my Instagram like 2 days ago when I made a post of, it was kind of, I think, a throwback to a Garmin video or something like that. And she was talking about the growth that I've had physically over the last 10 years. And so I went back, my friends, and I am going to bring you through this whole fitness journey from start to present day. We're talking 2015 era, overnight shifts, where I started, how many bulks, how many cuts, what my weight has done, what my food has done. Like, we are going to go in depth for all of the eras in the last decade. And I am so excited about it. This was very like nostalgic for me to film this video and to get like all of the footage for this video. I really enjoyed getting it all and downloading it and rewatching it. It was just really, really like, just brought me back to a simpler time, you know? So anyways, thank you so much for leaving me this comment because it inspired today's video. So we are just going to get on into it. I have so many notes, so many things to talk about. So grab yourself a snack or an energy drink and let's get into it. So a lot of people might not know this story, but initially when I was younger, and if you're on the Patreon, you do know this story because you know a lot of the lore in the background, but I really wanted to be a police officer. That was like my goal, my dream, but I was a very small woman and I just, number one, I was also like a kid. Like I still had my baby adult body, you know, like from 18 to 24, I feel like you don't really have your full maturity body yet, you know, and muscle memory and all of that, muscle maturity, which we'll talk about. But I was just like really skinny and really not athletic. Like there was literally nothing athletic about me. I was just skinny and had zero muscle to my body. And like, I came from the era of like the 90s and early 2000s where Slim Fast was in, where they used to call Jessica Simpson fat. Like we all, I fear, had that like really unhealthy relationship with being skinny back then. And I definitely did that. But then when I wanted to go to the police department, I was like, well, I have to get stronger. Obviously, it's like I'm gonna have to go to the gym. And the first thing I ever did was step into a Gold's Gym, which still to this day, not my favorite thing, but I was just trying to see what I liked and what would keep me motivated. And at the time, this was obviously Tumblr days. I was following a lot of Fitspos on the Tumblr era. Shout out to anyone who's been here since the Tumblr era. And I remember seeing a picture of Christmas Abbott and I was like, I want to look like that. And we had similar body types. We were both short, we're kind of square. And even to this day, people have said that I look like her, which is kind of funny, but I was like, that's what I want to look like. In 2015, I was like, okay, how do I look like her? She does CrossFit, I want to do CrossFit. So I joined my very first CrossFit gym, CrossFit Hype in Boca, and that was the start of my CrossFit journey. And like, fun little fact, the day, like I was, you know, researching CrossFit gyms, trying to see which ones I liked and whatever. And I pulled into the parking lot that day to take the class. Like I was just going to do a free trial class. And when I pulled into the parking lot, I'll never forget this. Everyone was outside. They were doing farmer carries in the workout and they had their shirts off and they were so buff and they were just like sweaty and working out so intense. And I literally pulled in the parking lot and I parked my car and I was like, nope, not doing it. Can't do it. And I turned around and left. And it took me like 3 times before I finally went in and joined the gym. And that was where it all started. So the first couple months that I got into CrossFit, which, you know, I'm so glad that I kept all of this footage because this was my very first time snatching, my very first time ever touching a barbell or a rig or anything. Like, you have to understand, I was a theater kid. So like, this type of athleticism, sure, we had dance and gymnastics when I was younger, but like I did not have the typical athleticism background or athletics background that a lot of people who start CrossFit had. And so I was super awkward, super uncomfortable, as we usually are when we start something new. And it was such a challenge. But as I got into the CrossFit side of things, I realized like I actually kind of like Olympic weightlifting. Like I think that I really enjoy snatching, clean and jerking, and for whatever reason, I just kind of fell into like the CrossFit pipeline to Olympic weightlifting, which seems to happen a lot, or it's usually like one way or the other. Like you start in Olympic weightlifting and go to CrossFit, or start in CrossFit and go to Olympic weightlifting. And that's kind of what I did within my first like 6 to 8 months, because I really like honed in on wanting to learn the Olympic lifts and wanting to be really good at them. And that's where I kind of fell in love with Olympic lifting. At the end of 2015, going into 2016, first of all, in January 2016, I did my very first Waterpalooza in Miami as an individual scaled, which I don't even remember. I think I placed like bottom of the barrel, maybe like bottom 20 or something like that. I just remember being like, this is so hard. And that first competition and that first like experience of competing, I think sparked some motivation for me to want to continue competing. And so I decided to do a weightlifting meet as well, because at that point I was like, I kind of like both of these, but I know you can't really do like both at the same time successfully. So I wanted to see how I enjoyed a weightlifting meet. So in 2016, I did my very first weightlifting meet, and this is before they changed the weight class from 53 to 55, I think it is now. And 53 kilos back in the day was my just like natural weight class. If anything, I was always under. So I started a lot of YouTube videos about like prepping for a weightlifting meet and trying to fill out my class, because ideally in any weight class sport, you want to be as heavy as possible in your weight class. So you only just cut a little bit into the weight class, and then you're basically the heaviest one in the weight class. Mass moves mass. And I was literally 109 pounds. Like I was literally so tiny and so just like wanting to take on the world and had these really unrealistic expectations. But I'm glad that I did, because I don't feel like I would have the work ethic that I do today if it wasn't for that version of myself, you know? So I registered for the Miami Classic, and that was my first weightlifting meet ever, which I ended up placing second. And it's so funny because I competed with Ricky, and we are still friends to this day. She is a police officer actually herself, and she's just kind of doing bodybuilding stuff, but we used to do a lot of CrossFit weightlifting stuff together, and she got first place and I got second. So that was really cool. I also did the Doral weightlifting classic, which I got drug tested at that one, and I remember being like so flattered because I think I won that classic. Granted, there was like 4 people in my weight class, so like, you know, not that crazy, but I won my weight class, and so I had to be drug tested. I did videos on that. That was so much fun. Like I remember eating donuts afterwards, and it was just like so much adrenaline and so much fun. And then because of that meet, I ended up qualifying for the American Open like nationals as a 53 kilo lifter, and that was going into 2017, which is the first time that I did any type of like national meet. So I definitely didn't win anything, and I was probably like at the very, very bottom of my weight class because I was still a 53, but I was like super light in the 53 class, and the girls that were snatching at that time were literally snatching like 180, 190 as 53 lifters. Like they were incredible. And I was up there with like my 110 pound snatch. So it was awesome. But because of that experience, I did track like every single thing, and because I was keeping track of my weight and my food and everything, I have all my weigh-ins from Fitbit. Like it's so cool to see my 2015 Fitbit screenshot of my weigh-ins, because obviously I was making sure that I was in weight for my weightlifting meets, and I was tracking my food. So it is just so crazy to think like I was literally 112, 113 pounds, and I was like, I'm gonna bulk, I need to get bigger. And like, you know, now like looking back, you know, after 10 years, I finally achieved that, and I am bigger and have more muscle mass. It's just like to see how much work that takes and how long of a process that is so crazy. In 2017, I also did my first CrossFit Open, and this is when I started filming my In the Open series. What an OG series. Absolutely loved that. It was so fun. And I was still working on balancing, you know, CrossFit and weightlifting at the same time. Not that I wanted to do anything like serious with weightlifting. It was just that I really enjoyed it. And so I was trying to like increase my weight a little bit, continue doing CrossFit, continue doing weightlifting. And it was just like all kind of the same thing throughout 2017, like rotating between those things, like the Open in the beginning part of 2017 and then weightlifting in the summer. And then going into mid 2017, this is the first time that I decided I was going to truly do like a true bulk and kind of scaled back on CrossFit a little bit because I wanted to do less endurance, less cardio, and more weightlifting and bodybuilding style stuff. Now, granted, the bodybuilding style stuff that I did back then is nowhere near like the bodybuilding stuff that I do now. I mean, I was like bare minimum accessory work, like 3 sets of 10 bicep curls if I was lucky on a good day. I was still mostly sticking to weightlifting and like just traditional compound lifts. And that was in 2017, like from the middle of 2017 to the end of 2017, trying to get, like, my goal was to get into the 120s, because before I had started anything, I was like 107 pounds. And then as I started going to the gym, I naturally just started gaining those like newbie gains. And I got up to like 109, 110. And then I always stayed between 110 and 117. That was like my range back then of maintenance. And so my goal was to try to get that maintenance level up to in the 120s. So I did my first bulk, and then the end of 2017 happened. Going into the beginning part of 2018, I was still focusing on weightlifting, but again, the open season was happening. I think this was in February back then in 2018, I believe, but I did my next in the open series, and I was still again balancing CrossFit and weightlifting while still trying to gain body mass at the same time.
Make it dance.
This is cool because in June of 2018, which would be like almost a full year of a true bulk, like I was eating over maintenance. I was really trying to not do as much CrossFit, only when like the open season came around. And so I decided to do a DEXA scan, which I don't have the original clip of my first DEXA scan, but this video that I did in June of 2018 with my like updated DEXA scan review video, I had ended up gaining up to 125 pounds, whereas before, like the most I had ever weighed throughout my like initial bulking process was 122 pounds. So when I got to 125, I was so excited. I was like, yes, you know, we're bulking, we're doing this right. And this is also like, just as a side note, as I was truly starting to gain a lot of weight in like, you know, it really isn't a short period of time, but like it feels that way when you are a shorter person and you have a short torso and a rounder face as is. Like you definitely carry your weight differently. And so going into like this 2018-2019 season, I think this is where I started getting very like insecure in my body, because a lot of people were calling me moon face Manders, refrigerator Manders. I mean, it was just the hate at this point when my face was getting fatter and rounder was so bad. And I really, really hated that, but I was so committed to gaining muscle that I just kept pushing through. So going into 2019, we have Waterpalooza vlog. I mean, this vlog is iconic. This was definitely the most that I've ever weighed in my entire life and in my entire like CrossFit journey and weightlifting journey. But at this point, I wasn't really doing any weightlifting meets. I was just primarily focusing on CrossFit because I knew I was going to do Waterpalooza, and it was just, I mean, you have to know that video was so crazy back then. So that was my first like real experience in the true Waterpalooza fashion on a team, and which was a mess anyways. But that was just like, it was a blast. I mean, shout out to that original video because it was so funny. So anyways, you know, at that point I was still in my like maintenance / bulk era. I wasn't really trying to gain a ton on purpose. It was just, I was eating a lot more because I was training so heavily into CrossFit and I was super tired trying to recover enough. So I started hovering between 125 and 129. And that was going into the summer of 2019 when I broke my arm. Another classic Manders era of the Cheeto cast. RIP to the Cheeto cast, okay? So funny, so iconic. when I was in this cast, obviously I couldn't do anything hanging from a bar, snatching, clean and jerking. I couldn't grip anything. So it was a lot of dumbbell stuff. It was a lot of lower body. And at this point, because I knew that I couldn't really do much CrossFit with a broken hand, though I did try, I switched gears into focusing on more of just like traditional weightlifting, like squat cycles. I remember I did, I forget what that squat cycle was called. I did a specific squat cycle back then, even with my broken hands. Like I was still squatting 3-4 times a week. I was really, really trying to grow my legs, grow my lower body strength. I mean, it was just, that was all I could do with a broken hand. And I think, you know, that was really helpful for my overall lower body strength and performance. So after I got my cast off the end of 2019, I definitely just kind of like hovered around that 125 space, because now that was like my new set point, my new maintenance. And going into 2020, now obviously you guys know I was living in the Midwest, and I will say I definitely was not my happiest, both in my body and just like in my relationship, what was happening at the time. And I felt like I was in quite a bit of a mental funk. I had a lot of issues with my ex's gym at the time, because like they didn't like that I was doing my own thing in the gym, and like I'm just not a very like social person when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so that dynamic was really frustrating for me, and it made me not want to go to the gym. And so in 2020, that was when I started building my basement gym. And obviously we know that COVID happened in the beginning of 2020, which that kind of was like a blessing in disguise for me, honestly, both from a standpoint of training and just like everything that I learned in my life at that time. But that process of being in quarantine at home, taking a bunch of equipment from the gym and putting it in the basement, building the basement gym, that is also where I developed the concept for my app, because I knew that so many people wanted to do CrossFit, but all of their CrossFit gyms were closing. They couldn't get to the gym. So what can we do? We have to figure out how to do CrossFit at home. And that is where I started writing these workouts. I was publishing them all the time. And then I was like, wait, these are really good. Like, these are really great workouts. I want to share them. And so that was how I got started with the app. That was super pivotal for me. I loved building the workouts, building all the different like schedules and programs and things. Like I had nothing to do other than sit at home. So I was so blessed to be able to really make that app what it is today. And all of those things, all the dumbbells, all of the dumbbell only programs, and the at home and the body weight beginner, all of those are still on the app. Like if you subscribe to the app, you get access to all of that. So go check that out if you haven't checked it out. Anyways, continuing on into 2020, where this is where the body composition is at. And because everything was closed, there was really no true CrossFit that I was getting in. It was just kind of like here and there. I was doing a lot more like functional lifting at home, dumbbell style, some CrossFit like Metcons with dumbbells here and there. But then I got asked to do the Central Regional in 2020, and that was kind of like my getting back into CrossFit time, I guess you could say. And I definitely was not in the best shape in that period. I just simply wasn't training CrossFit that much or Olympic weightlifting, and I had also just come off of breaking my hand, and I just don't think that that was like my best physically that I've ever been. But I still, you know me, I'm still trying to do it all. So that was the end of 2020. And then now we're getting into 2021. And this is when I kind of started falling in love with Peloton. And I had gone on a trip, and in the hotel gym, they had a Peloton. And I remember doing it, like kind of thinking it was silly at first. And then I just ended up really liking it. And I did it a couple more times. And I was like, I want one of these for the basement gym. So you guys know, added a Peloton bike to the basement gym. And then I was like, so just gung-ho on the basement gym. I was ready to deck it out. I did deck it out. I loved it. I loved everything about that basement gym. It was my favorite part of living in the Midwest. I put so much work into that basement gym, and it was just, I focused on my app. I did so many workout videos in there. I literally never left the house. I mean, it was just my dream. So I loved that. And even though like the open was happening in 2021, I was participating more casually. I wasn't really training CrossFit the way that I used to. So it was just kind of like I was popping in to do the community workouts with the people at the gym, and that was kind of it. In the middle of 2021, for some reason, I got a bug up my ass that I wanted to do this little race. It wasn't a half marathon. I think it was like a 7-mile race, I think. I don't even know what they consider that, but I was doing that because I was doing more cardio with Peloton, and I felt like I could handle the endurance. And so I signed up for that, was running so much alongside my Peloton rides and more functional training at home. And I ended up getting some weird like ligament injury in my foot. I honestly don't even remember what it was. I think it was like a partial tear and something in my ankle or my foot. And I was in a boot for a hot minute. I'm always in a boot or a cast, but you know, I still trained. So I trained as best as I could. Obviously there was no Peloton, there was no bikes, there was no Olympic lifting. It was mostly just like training on my knees and sitting down doing like upper body bodybuilding stuff, which was crazy, but I did it. And that was the end of 2021, and January 2022 came around, and what did I do? I did Waterpalooza. And I think I said I'm never doing that again at that video, and those videos were also iconic, so funny, such a great time, honestly. And even though the Open, again, that year in March or April, whenever that was, even though it was happening, I definitely was just doing it for fun. Again, like the entirety of 2021, I really wasn't doing CrossFit. And after that last comp in 2020, I was kind of just like, whatever. I'm just really like, I'm not on PEDs. I'm never going to compete with these girls. I'm never going to snatch 200. Like it was just a constant uphill battle for me. And it's something I still struggle with to this day. So I just kind of like took a little step back from it. And that was when the Peloton running picked up. So when the Open came around in 2022, I was like, all right, I'll do it for fun. Whatever. I did a little bit at the gym. I did one of them at home. Like it was so casual. I didn't even sign up for it. Didn't log my scores, nothing like that. But I just did it because, you know, CrossFit's just been a part of my life for so long that I just did it. And then we have the summer of 2022, which was quite honestly the worst summer of my entire life. And, you know, got fully divorced in 2022, moved across the country, Tuxie died. I mean, it was just from like June to September of 2022, I was in such a horrible depression, and I just like, I couldn't really function. I wasn't myself. It wasn't great. And after Tuxie had passed away, I was like, okay, I need to join a CrossFit gym again because, like I said, it has been a part of my life for so long. It's just something that I always resort back to. And so I looked up CrossFit gyms and I found CrossFit. It was in Vogue. Now it's called Iron District, but it was in Vogue at the time. And that was when I met Cody for the first time. And that kind of brought my spark back to CrossFit, and we had so much fun training together. It really just like motivated me again, inspired me to get back into everything, and I was so grateful for our friendship. So that was in like August, September, October of 2022. And then I decided, okay, I lost a bunch of weight from all of the stress with the divorce and everything like that, and then Tuxie's passing, that I really wanted to try to bulk again. And in December of 2022, this was the start of my first bulk. And I was so excited because I was going to pull back on CrossFit again, and kind of focus on, I was still doing it, but just like not, you know, as seriously as I was before. And I was going to just focus on bodybuilding style workouts, building my upper body strength, my lower body strength. And I bulked all the way from November of 2022 until April of 2023. And I was up to, I think it was like 134, 135 was like the highest I got. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to cut back down a little bit because that was just like where I wanted to see where my maintenance was. I knew that 135 and what I had gained, I was really eating a lot more than I normally had. So I knew that like that wasn't sustainable for me to maintain at. So I did a little bit of a cut in 2023 summer and got down to 125 pounds. And this is when I first started boxing. This kind of also like inadvertently helped with the cut because it wasn't a long cut. I think I did like an 8 or 10 week cut. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just to kind of lose the extra couple of pounds that I had gained in the bulk itself. And it was just a way to increase my energy expenditure to help with the cut. And so when I started boxing, I fell in love with it, as you guys know. And this was when I decided that I wanted to come up with like a more functional style training, more bodybuilding, but mixed with CrossFit style, but not quite CrossFit, because when I started boxing, I was like, I just feel like I am not really fitting into CrossFit anymore. And at this point, Cody had left and moved to Florida. So like I didn't have my CrossFit buddy anymore. And I was just like, okay, I really want to just switch things up and get into boxing. And so that's how that started. So that was when I did, you know, my why I'm leaving CrossFit video, which I never fully leave CrossFit, but you know, it was the end of 2023 and I was bulking and then going into 2024. Now, after I did my little baby cut from the end of 2023, when I started boxing, I had gotten down to 125. And that was my new starting point. So think about it this way. When you're cutting and bulking, you want to get to where your original starting weight is your new cut weight. You know what I mean? Like I cut now to 125 and that used to be what my old bulking goal was. And now that's the start of my new bulk, you know? So I was really excited that I had done that. Now, mind you, we're getting into 2024. So this has taken me 8 years to gain 10 pounds. And that's also like, just as a shout out to me, when people like accuse me of being on steroids, I'm like, do you know how steroids work? Because if that were the case, I would have been so much more lean. I wouldn't have taken 8 years to put on 10 pounds. Like, please, I would have loved to. I still to this day am not opposed to it, but I just don't know where to buy it. And I also don't really love the risks of it. But I really, like, this is just true testament to showing you how long this shit takes when you're doing it naturally and you're not on PEDs. But anyways, going into 2024, January 2024, I had my lower blepharoplasty, which meant I had no training for 4 weeks. And I just tried to keep up my bulk as best as I could and try to get my body weight up as high as possible. And I got up to 135 pounds. And this, again, is the highest that I've ever weighed. And this is the like comparison of that 2024 bulk to the 2345 cows, where I was showing the difference between like what my maintenance looked like versus what my bulk looked like. And I love this representation, just kind of like what I just said about like trying to make your bulk be this new starting point of your cut, or vice versa. It's just really helpful visualization to see that like, okay, now I got up to here. Now I'm going to do a small cut and reset my maintenance to get to 128, 129, whereas that was like way over what my bulk was the first go around, you know? So my whole goal was to get up to a maintenance of around 130. And this is a very, very hard thing to do naturally when you're, you know, trying to blend different styles of training and boxing and things like that. So at this point in 2024, I completely removed CrossFit from my training, only did bodybuilding, functional style, everything that I wrote on my app, my 8-week functional fitness program, 1 and 2. I did both of those myself, and boxing alongside that. So I did that all the way throughout the end of 2024, and then we moved to California in January of 2025. And at this point, again, because of the stress of moving and the stress of life, I did lose a little bit of weight. I got down to 127. This was in January, and immediately, same thing. I was like, okay, I'm in a new place. I need to find a new place to train, and I found CrossFit CSA, which is also CSA Gym, CSA Boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, the whole nine, and it was like the best of both worlds combined, and I immediately got hired in January of 2025, and you know, I'm still there, love my CSA fam. And I originally planned to continue boxing, but when I first got hired and I was just kind of trying to get back into a routine, I was a little too nervous to jump into their MMA boxing like classes because they're so intense. Obviously, we have a ton of professional UFC fighters and MMA, Muay Thai. Like I was not at that level. So I was like, okay, we'll stick to the CrossFit side. And so I just did CrossFit. And then of course, as you know, the open came, and it was my first time doing the open workouts since 2022. Just kind of jumped back into it. I remember being like, holy shit, I'm so out of shape. Like I was dying from not doing CrossFit all of 2024. And it was a fun way for me to kind of get back into the CrossFit workouts with the community and all of that. And I love the gym that I'm at so much now. In April 2025, which just a few months ago, I finally just started to dip my toes back into boxing after a little bit of a break. And, you know, I thought it would be cool to potentially do a boxing meet at some point, maybe maybe 2026. And so that was kind of in like the far sight of my goals. And I knew that going into this training. So I started doing 101s. I definitely was able to blend in some CrossFit along with that just to keep my like motivation high and give me that sense of community since I am coaching at the CrossFit gym. And then Lainey actually pushed me to compete at MCC, and that was my first time coming into any CrossFit competition since Waterpalooza, and what a blast that was. Fun videos, fun time all around. I got second, as you guys know, and then after that I was invited to compete at Waterpalooza with Cody, which was such a full circle moment, and I was like, duh, of course I'm gonna do that. So we just did that was last month, September 2025, a full 10-year full circle moment. And that brings us to October 2025, which is where we are right now. And I am at this current stage in my physique where I am just maintaining around like 133. It's kind of just been where I've been hovering for the majority of this year. And I think that going into this winter season of 2025, I would love to do another intentional bulk again while pulling back on CrossFit, prioritizing boxing and bodybuilding style as I did last year, because I really felt like that helped my physique so much, and I focused solely on like my quad growth, my delt growth, things that are just lacking for me, and I really enjoy that. So that's kind of like what my plans are. And then when Lainey starts academy in next month, I'll have just a lot more time to do like the sparring classes and things that are a little bit more advanced for me boxing wise, so I can see where I am with that and if I want to still compete maybe next year. So that, my friends, is the full 10-year recap. Thank you so much for watching if you watched this entire video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe so you never miss a Monday with Manders. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. If you've been here since the beginning or more recently, whenever you've joined the Manders charades, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you in next week's video.